Shalom, more praise YAHAWASHI, double line, the Apostle GMS. This is I'm Never Allah, coming to another video. And in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the book of 2 Timothy 2 and 18, going into how people have said that the resurrection had passed already. So let's begin. I'm starting from verse 16. 2 Timothy 2 and 16. But shun profane and vain babblings, for they will increase unto more ungodliness. And their word will eat as doeth the canker, of whom is Hymenaeus and Philetus. Let's go to that word, canker. See the word canker mean.
Strong's G 1044. Gangrena.
Gangrena, a gangrene disease by which any part of the body suffering from inflammation becomes so corrupted that unless a remedy is seasonably applied, the evil continually spreads, attacks others, and at last eats away the bones. So we're the Lord's body, we're the Lord's church. Just as a gangrene can affect an actual body and spread throughout the body, this spiritual gangrene or canker or false teaching could spread throughout the church. And that gangrene has to be remedied. It has to be cured so that it doesn't spread throughout your body. So then the members have to be cut off. Just as this spiritual gangrene has to be cured so that it doesn't spread throughout the church, alright? This is dictionary.com, the word gangrene. Moral or spiritual corruption and decadence that pervades an individual or group. There you go. Moral or spiritual corruption and decadence that pervades an individual group. Pervade meaning to spread throughout an individual, a person, or a group. In this case, the church, or the body, which is made up of many members of the church. The various believers. Okay? Let me go back. And they were as a canker, as doeth the canker, of whom is Hymenaeus and Philetus. Verse 18, who concerning the truth have erred, saying that the resurrection is past already. So they had erred concerning the truth. What does it mean they erred concerning the truth? They erred concerning the truth, saying that the resurrection is past already. So they're saying the Lord died, but the resurrection means to rise. They're saying the Lord died, but the resurrection had passed already. He died and the spirit just rose up and went up to the heavens. And that overthrew the faith of some. Because remember, though the Lord was crucified and the Lord did die, remember, there was an actual physical resurrection of his body. And he was among the disciples for 40 days. And then he went back up into the Father. But he's going to make a second coming. So when they said that the resurrection had passed already, they were basically denying the resurrection of the body. Yeah, he died and the spirit rose. Yeah, that was the resurrection. Because you know when you go into this book of Matthew, it speaks about in the resurrection who will be the woman's husband. Maybe I'll go into this deeper in another lesson. But it goes to, in the book of Matthew, speak about a woman had many husbands, and when in the resurrection, who shall be her husband? Yahweh shall reply, what? He said, and when they go into in the resurrection, when they're in the heavens, they like the angels. They neither marry nor are they given in marriage. So resurrection also goes into the rising of your spirit, going into the heavens, going into heaven. So when these men, Hymenaeus and Philetus, were saying that the resurrection is past already, that's what they were referencing. They were referencing the person that actually physically died and the spirit went back into heaven. But though that is a form of resurrection, the resurrection that happened with YAHAWASHI was not only that, but it was the actual physical resurrecting of his body. Therefore, that is an aspect of resurrection that they're denying. And it said, and overthrow the faith of some. So some's faith was overthrown by that. Because remember, the scriptures speak about the Lord rising up from the dead. So some's faith is overthrown. But guess what? Nevertheless, the foundation of the Most High standeth sure, having this seal. The Lord knoweth them that are his. So even though some's faith was overthrown, the Lord still knows who are his. So those who had their faith overthrown were not of the Lord. And let everyone that nameth the name of YAHAWASHI depart from iniquity. Let's keep going. 2 Timothy chapter 2, chapter 3, verse 13. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. So evil men and seducers are going to wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived, like Hymenaeus and Philetus. But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and has been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them. So you got to continue that you have learned, and have been assured of, made sure of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them, which they had learned from the Apostle Paul. And this is an epistle that the Apostle Paul is writing to Timothy to give to the church. Continue in your faith. That's what he's saying. Because you're going to have some people out there that's going to be deceiving and being deceived, like Hymenaeus and Philetus was doing. They were deceiving and people were being deceived. 1 Timothy 1:19, holding faith in a good conscience, which some having put away concerning faith have been made shipwreck. Like when a ship wrecks and you abandon ship, some have concerning faith have made shipwreck, they have abandoned faith. Of whom is Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have delivered unto Satan, that they may learn not to blaspheme. So these are examples, all right, of people who had denied the Lord. This is the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 15, verse, come on, man. 1 Corinthians 15 and 12. Now, if Yahawashi be preached that he rose from the dead, how say some among you that there is no resurrection of the dead? So if it's being preached, if it's being taught that Yahawashi rose from the dead, how say some of you that there is no resurrection of the dead? But if there be no resurrection of the dead, then is Yahawashi not risen? So if there's a resurrection from the dead, then Yahawashi is not risen. It's being taught, it's being preached that Yahawashi rose from the dead. So why some of y'all saying that there's no resurrection of the dead? If that's just being taught and you claim to be a believer of Yahawashi. But if there be no resurrection of the dead, then is Yahawashi not risen? So if there's no resurrection of the dead, then is Yahawashi not risen? Remember, Yahawashi actually rose from the dead. That was his resurrection. His body actually risen from the dead. But if there be no resurrection of the dead, then Yahawashi is not risen. And if he's not risen, obviously he'd still be deceased, right? Still be dead. He would not have risen. And if Yahawashi be not risen, then our preaching is in vain. So if Yahawashi be not risen, then our preaching is in vain. Because if we're preaching the resurrection of Yahawashi and Yahawashi is not risen, then our preaching is in vain. It's empty. It holds no purpose. And your faith is also in vain. Your faith also is in vain. Because how could you say that you believe that Yahawashi was sent by the Father to die for the sins of the nation of Israel and to be crucified and resurrected again? How could you say you believe in that if you don't believe in the resurrection of the dead? How could you say that you have faith in that? Well, guess what? If he be not risen, then your faith is in vain. Because if you have faith according to what's being preached that he was resurrected, if you're not teaching or believing in the resurrection, then guess what? Your faith is in vain. You can't have faith in the person that you say resurrected from the dead if you deny that there is even a resurrection. Yea, and we have found false witnesses of the Most High. So then that make us false witnesses. Because we have testified to the Most High that he raised up Yahawashi. So then now make us false witnesses. Because we're testifying that Yahawashi was risen from the dead, if that's what we're testifying, but if there's no resurrection, then guess what? That then makes us now false witnesses. Yea, and we have found false witnesses of the Most High, because we have testified of the Most High that he raised up Yahawashi, whom he raised not up. If there's no resurrection, of course, that's what he's saying, whom he raised not up. We testifying that the Most High raised up one who he did not raise up. If so be that the dead rise not. If it is so that the dead rise not. So he's making it clear. He's not saying that the Most High didn't raise Yahawashi up. But he's saying, yea, we have found false witnesses of the Most High, because we have testified of the Most High that he raised up Yahawashi, whom he raised not up. If so be that the dead rise not. So if it so be that the dead rise not, then that means the Most High did not raise them up. And if he did not raise them up, then that would then make them false witnesses. For if the dead rise not, then is not Yahawashi raised. So if the dead doesn't rise from the dead, then guess what? Yahawashi is not risen. And if Yahawashi be not raised, your faith is vain. You are yet in your sins. So if Yahawashi be not raised, then your faith is in vain. And guess what? You're still in your sins. Because if he died for your sins and was going to be resurrected, and you believe not that, then guess what? You got to still be in your sins then. Then they also which are fallen asleep in Yahawashi perish. Meaning those that died in the faith, they perish. They're going forever. They're going forever. Okay? If that's the case, if in this life only we have hope in Yahawashi, we are of all men most miserable. So if this life only we have hope in Yahawashi, we are of all men most miserable. Because remember, we have hope in Yahawashi in this life, And the hope that we have in Yahawashi and us maintaining our faith, guess what? We're continuously being tempted. We're continually going through trials and tribulations and afflictions. But if we have only hope in Yahawashi in this life and not in the next life, then guess what? We are men most miserable, because all of the afflictions and tribulations we going through is for no reason. Right? If in this life only we have hope in him. Because we have hope in him in this life, but not just in this life, but in the life or in the kingdom to come. But if that's not the case, because you're not resurrecting, then we have been most miserable. We're going through all of this to receive nothing. So with that, I'm going to close. I'm going to say, oh, praise Yahawah Shah. I hope you brothers learned something. And I'm going to say, Shalom.